Hello, everyone. My name is Patricia. I heard you guys talk a lot, so I have this bell. I am from scrum.org, and I have actually been doing almost a European world tour for about 2 weeks. So this is the end, and I'm really excited to go home, but I'm also really depressed. And Alan reminded me in his talk when he talked about Trump. Then I got a little bit excited and more happy because he started to talk about value and money, but then he put a freaking picture of a rat, and then I got depressed again. So I have a little bit of a paranoia with rodents. So I'm here to talk, and it's a nice complimentary actually to Alan's talk, why on time, on budget, and on scope doesn't work. And I think the way that we can do this, since you guys have been sitting already for a little bit, is true scrum.org fashion, is think about it. Because actually the next exercise will hopefully, in a Jedi fashion, let you know why this doesn't work. So I want you to think about the most valuable indicator you've seen in your career. Then think about the most harmful one and consider the difference. Think about those things and then talk to actually form groups of three. Form groups of three, talk to the two people around you, and talk about the most valuable indicator, the most harmful indicator, and the difference between the two. And identify your career as something you've seen in your professional career, okay? I'll give you 4 minutes. Yes? What is an indicator? Something that indicates. So could that be a metric? Maybe. Could it be a feeling? Maybe. I will set the timer. I will ring this bell, and you guys will all be quiet after. All right. I'm sorry, cameraman. I'm going to run around. Let's see what you guys had. Emily, what did you talk about?
We talked about good indicator of working code.
Was that the best?
That was a good indicator. We didn't come up with anything much better than working code, actually.
And what was the most harmful?
We came up with very long-lived open branches that weren't merged.
And those hurt you in your professional career? Yeah? Thank you. Geeta, my name is Patricia.
Hello. Crying in the bathroom is a really valuable indicator of bad psychological safety.
What's going on here in Sweden? Okay.
No, it was actually in Romania, but that was like a really valuable indicator, but it was also painful. Most harmful, having people have their bonus depend on if they fulfilled the quarterly goals, which meant that the goals they were setting were either really, really low or...
They set them themselves?
Yeah, or cheating. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sucks. You were trying not to look at me. No?
We talked about the bonus systems as a harmful indicator that are not making people work together. And valuable indicator, we talked about sales. For a company, it must be whether the sales are going up or not. Sort of.
Yeah. So these indicators can be different depending what you're thinking about. I was actually working with a client, and we were talking about this, and I had two gentlemen, and they both came up with NPS, Net Promoter Score, what the customers think. But one came up with that it was the most valuable indicator because it let me focus and know what to do. And the other one said, that's a really bad indicator because it drives my life. All I do, I watch if it goes up or down, and that's all I do is watch that. So that is why we can think about why having something very fixed doesn't always work. So as we get started, just a little bit about me. Again, my name is Patricia Kong. I am the product owner of Enterprise Solutions at scrum.org, and all that really means is outside of the team, how do we take that good stuff and try to help an organization? I wrote a book last year called The Nexus Framework for Scaling Scrum. This year I'm going to try to learn how to swim. I also serve as a mentor for underserved youth, and I have a background in organizational behavior. My background is also very corporate, so Agile is not my natural stance, as you can probably tell. So at scrum.org, we work to improve the profession of software delivery. We're a mission-based company owned by Ken Schwaber. What's interesting is that our company is called scrum.org, but you don't see Scrum in the mission, right? So we're trying to improve the profession, and we're very focused on value. So we do it in all different ways, hence why I think about the enterprise and the organization. So today when we think about agility and we think about, how does it work when we're trying to measure in that space? And to follow up on Alan's talk, I'll share some of the things that I've been working on with my colleagues. So generally what we've been seeing is that for the past decade, organizations have been rushing to Scrum and Agile, right? They say, oh, software is where it's at now. Software is eating the world. This is what we need to do. And now, actually, they're rushing to scale. Oh, we got to scale. That's the big topic, right? So you pick up all the buzzwords, and that's what they're rushing toward. But people are rushing towards Scrum. And what we fondly call that at scrum.org is Scrum-Pete, right? They're just rushing. And usually what happens is an executive in an organization says, ooh, that looks good. What are they doing? We want that everywhere. So we start an agile transformation. Agile transformation means we're going agile. We want this everywhere, and we're going to do it. It's going to be amazing. Oh, that sounds like Donald Trump. We're going to make Scrum great again. But the irony when they're doing that is when they're thinking about we have a goal and we're going to become agile, and we're going to do it in 1 or 2 years, is that they're using agile, using waterfall to try to adopt agile. Does this sound familiar anywhere? Yeah? The pro-agile guys. And the thing is that they're looking at waterfall because traditional organizations, they love plans, right? So they have all these things they have to think about. They want to plan how to become agile. They're going to plan their transformation, and they're going to be very precise of how to do it. Well, how can we do that? Let's train up everybody. How many coaches do we need? How many Scrum Masters? How many product owners? What could actually go wrong? Nothing. Nothing happens. You remember the executive? We agile yet? Faster yet? You guys happier yet? What do you say? Has anybody ever been asked this? Raise your hand if you have been. And the thing is, we're just left with good intentions, right? My time's up. We're left with good intentions. We've been trying to do all these things, and we don't really know what to talk about because this is a new way. And the thing is that what we start to show is we start to measure and show things that are easy, right? These are hard. Agility is a new thing, so we have to think of a different way, which is what Alan was talking about. But this is easy, right? So we start to think about story points. We start to think about, I don't know, gummy bears. We think about T-shirts and all that stuff. This is actually from 2017 of how, we think about agile metrics. What we usually see in organizations is that they will assign a cost to this. And where I come from, that's called same shit, different day. I don't know if I'm allowed to say shit. And we have to think about how dangerous this can be if we're really trying to become an agile organization, or if we're actually just starting to think about how can we build better products and deliver more value. When we think about progress and use that as our main guide, right, we're misaligning business and delivery. So there's that clash. So this is one of those cultural clashes that we see. The thing is that's normal because IT has always been managed as a cost center, right? We talked about traditional organizations where we think about cost, scope, and time. And if you're trying to become more agile, and if you're trying to embody that as a person inside an organization, if you're an organization that's trying to be more nimble, you're going to become stalled. Why? Because you're innately fighting against two different things, or geared toward two different things. So in a traditional organization, we're trying to maximize efficiency of resource utilization. Typically, resource here means people. In an agile organization, we're trying to maximize learning and innovation, right? So we're trying to become more effective, and efficiency is something that comes along with it. So when I speak at conferences, I usually try to do two things. Think about the culture of the people that I'm speaking with, and also just find out more about the history of the conference. So, did you guys know what the commonality between brewing beer and agility is? No. Actually, you could say that. Brewing beer and brewing agile, yeah? Small batches? Good one. Feedback loops. I spent a night researching what it's like to brew beer and sake and wine and how you make it better and what you would use and how you can make it more effective and taste better and all this stuff. And I don't even drink beer, but I learned a lot about it. And the big thing is feedback loops, empiricism, right? To try to get better at something. So agility stalls, we see that all the time, right? You start a transformation, you start it again, start somewhere else, starts this part of the organization. I was at a conference where I saw a bank. They had started an agile transformation in 2 parts of the organization for 2 years, and they didn't know about it. So they're starting it again. So let's ask the question, what's really driving agile adoption? So Alan talked about technology changes means we change the process. I also think about the mindset of what we're trying to do. But the thing is that we're changing because now the customer has a lot of power. The customer is at the center, right? So whereas a traditional organization, we talked about this today in the workshop, really focused on, us, the fat emperor, now we have to look outward and say, customers have a lot of options and they want a lot of things quickly, so how can we do that? The thing is the customer might be at the center of everything, but the customer isn't always right. So when you look at some of this experimentation, you can see, for instance, in the platform at Microsoft, only 1/3 improved the metrics that they were looking at to improve. Some other smart companies here, for instance, bottom right, Google, only 10% of the experiments were leading to business change. Over here, 80% of the time we're wrong. That means only 20% of the time we're right. It's humbling to realize how rare it is for a feature to succeed on the first attempt because we're so invested in it, right? So if the customer isn't always right, what do we need to do? Well, they don't need to be right. What we need to do is see how fast we can churn through things. So what does that look like? Well, if we think about beer, same thing, feedback loop. First, we're identifying an opportunity, and then we're trying to understand desired outcomes. We talked a lot about that today in our workshop too. What are the outcomes of our customers? What do they want? And then look at different solutions, and then 4, build at least a part of it. MVP, but actually what this means to me is what is the smallest experiment you could run to test something? And Jeff Gotthelf, he writes a really great book around this. It's called Sense and Respond, so it might be looking at, and then deploy and measure. So when we're thinking about this, let's get a little bit into what that actually looks like. So, how do we deliver with outcomes? Well, figure out who your customer is and what they want, right? That's easier when you're in a product organization or understanding your products. But really, what are outcomes? When we think about that, we can think about what outcomes really are, right? So a lot of people and a lot of, my phone's over there. A lot of the cameras now, they have on the phone, it has like all these different cameras and they're really cool. And it's really geared toward 2 things that I've seen on my Samsung, on my Galaxy, is that you can take better selfies and you can take better pictures of food. That's really what I've noticed, right? So it's what people like me really like to do. So we're thinking about outcomes in that way. Thinking about chat, same thing. Are there multiple features that can help you deliver the same outcome? What about when we get into this? Oh, we're thinking about our product and we want to have this type of display, and so we want to be able to have longer battery life and higher resolution. We're thinking about all these features sometimes, but really let's track back to the different outcomes. How can you do that for your product, right? Think about that at your organization. What do you guys value? What do your customers value? What is the outcome that they want from your product? Think about that. Because otherwise, if you just focus on features, you're going to get something else. So how many of you have a smartphone that has this feature where it monitors your heart? And how many of you use it? Do you know, is it just because it's on your phone? I'm not talking about the Fitbit app. I'm talking about this. I deleted it off mine. because I got so mad that it was telling me I wasn't taking enough steps. I said, if I want to know how many steps I take, I'll buy a Fitbit. No, thank you. The other thing is that when we're focusing on features, we're losing sight of the outcomes and the business goals that are there. Do me a favor, stand up if you are a member of the development team. Okay, take a good look if you develop. No, sorry, stand up, get back up. Raise your hand if you know what the customer goal and business objectives are. All right, thanks, that's about right, sit down. I used to work at Forrester Research. When we talk about this Agile stuff, right, this is from, I think, 2017. We talk about being more agile, and we just talked about features and outcomes, yet developers are 6.5 times more likely not to know priorities based on, compared to managers, right? So that information is getting held somewhere. And if you want to talk about culture, if you want to talk motivation, guess what the best way to do that is? Transparency, communication, being open, talking about that vision that we've set about what we want to do as an organization. Do you have some more ideas that you can contribute because you're the one that's actually building the product? Think about those things. So, next exercise. Who in your organization is actually talking to the customer to understand them? Talk to the person next to you. Let's do that for 2 minutes. All right. How many of you had management for any of these answers? Raise your hand. How many of you had salespeople? Raise your hand. How many of you had product owners? Raise your hand. How many of you had the delivery team? Raise your hand. Oh, good job. When we talk about skills, Bjorn kind of brought that up. When we talk about skills, right, the ability for a developer to be able to have that conversation or just gauge that, first is motivating for them, but it's also an opportunity for us to be more agile. And there's a conversation here about, oh my God, we do not want to have a developer talk to the customer, right? Well, that's okay. And maybe there are some people who want to. Or is that some place where they can develop that skill that they can improve? We should think about that. So if we're trying to be more agile, it means that we're thinking about empiricism, right? Inspect and adapt. So we talked about this. We're going to take an empirical and transparent approach. We're thinking about outcomes and how to cycle through those quickly because the customer isn't always right. So when we get to that and we're thinking about it, how do we measure in this new way, right? There aren't a fixed set of measures necessarily, but you have to understand the intention of what supports agility and value, business value. People throw around business value. So we're develop value, and it bothers me because I want to know what is value. Tell me besides money, what is value to you? So what we look at is 4 areas. It's called key value areas, and this is the evidence-based management framework, saying if you're looking at business value and agility, look at these 4 areas: current value, where we are now; time to market; ability to innovate; and unrealized value. Now, recently we added unrealized value. There used to be only 3 because we said, you know what? Everything else there is very inward looking. We need to look out. We need to look out at the market. We need to say, if we have an hypothesis, how do we know that it's going to contribute to the value of our product? This is written in an evidence-based management guide. The actual content is only 6 pages, but there's an appendix of measures. And the measures in there have definitions of what you're measuring and what to think about. So you can start here. You can start by saying, hey, are there some things in here that we can start to capture if we have a definition of value for a product, and what can we add to it? That would be a good place to start. But I would challenge you to say, think very specifically about your outcomes and how that's going to help appeal to your customer outcomes. So we have unrealized value, right? So looking out at the market, looking at any gaps that exist and the reason that we should close them or not. Time to market, these should be very familiar to everyone. There's one here that we added though, it's called the time to learn. So the time to learn is when you do something, how long does it take you to actually learn, right? Your own cycle. Do you learn from your mistakes? Do you learn from your failures? So if you get something out to deployed to production, how long does it actually take for you to learn? An ability to innovate. And ability to innovate is really interesting because it's also looking at the time to market, but it's looking at what's holding you back from being able to innovate. So are you maintaining a lot of features? Are you maintaining a lot of versions that aren't very useful? And like I said, when you think about measurement, it seems like a lot, right? I just showed, this is it's just like 4 or 5 circles and some lines. It's a lot, so just get started. This is actually just an Excel spreadsheet, and it's a live sheet. I cannot share this sheet with you, but it's actually by a PST, his name is Don McGrail, and they had the information looking at progress, so looking at velocity and the scope and things like that, looking at the budget, and then looking at these leading and lagging indicators. Leading meaning, what can I tell right now? What can I see immediately? And lagging is stuff that I won't know after the fact. And that's just a really pretty dashboard representation of it, all right? So it's the same thing, actually. Now, why is measurement important? We talked about that today also in the group, and the answer is to understand where you are and also to improve, right? It's really interesting because 10 out of 10 times when I am in a private setting with a client, I ask, why are we here? Why is measurement so important? And they all look around, and it's always the most senior person in the room who answers, always. And that senior person in the room goes, because we're trying to improve, right? It's always the most senior person, and I don't know why, but then what we do is we try to see, hey, if you're gonna measure, then do something with it. So you're in that position to try to think about that, to understand. So in Sweden, do you have hippos? Hippos, the animal? But you have these hippos, right? Good. And you don't come to the table with data, especially, a business person or something. If you don't come to that table talking about this is what we've seen, this is where we should move. Anybody here from Accenture? There is an Accenture consultant behind you who's made up some stuff and who's gonna take care of that for you. The other thing that we think about when we think about, why should we be thinking about considering value? Why should we think about how this is actually a way to bring together teams, bring together a vision? The reason is because we have to think about back to the beginning, when we started to talk about what are valuable indicators for a career and what are harmful ones, right? Otherwise, we end up in a really crappy place, and it looks like this. I hope this works. We will see. Oops. Oops. I'll try it again. Nope. One last time. Jeez, shit. I'll do it. I just need to pay attention. Yeah. Anybody watch Office Space? There you go.
Slidell, this is my associate Bob Porter.
Oh, hi, Bob. Bob?
Pretty much go ahead and grab a seat and join us for a minute or two. You see, what we're actually trying to do here is we're trying to get a feel for how people spend their day at work. So if you would you walk us through a typical day for you?
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I generally come in at least 15 minutes late. I use the side door. That way Lumberg can't see me. And after that, I just sort of space out for about an hour. Till I'm busy.
Space out?
Yeah, I just stare at my desk. But it looks like I'm working. I do that for probably another hour after lunch, too. I'd say in a given week, I probably only do about 15 minutes of real, actual work.
Peter, would you be a good sport and indulge us and just tell us a little more?
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something about TPS reports. The thing is, Bob, it's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
Don't care?
It's a problem of motivation, all right? Now, if I work my ass off and Initech ships a few extra units, I don't see another dime. So where's the motivation? And here's something else, Bob. I have 8 different bosses right now.
I beg your pardon?
8 bosses.
8?
8, Bob. So that means that when I make a mistake, I have 8 different people coming by to tell me about it. That's my only real motivation, is not to be hassled. That and the fear of losing my job. But you know, Bob, that'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
Would you bear with me for just a second, please?
Okay.
What if, and believe me, this is so hypothetical, but what if you were offered some kind of a stock option equity sharing program? Would that do anything for you?
I don't know, I guess. Listen, I'm gonna go. It's been really nice talking to both of you guys.
Absolutely. The pleasure's all on this side of the table, trust me.
Good luck with your layoffs, all right? I hope your firings go really well.
Excellent. Great. Wow.
You guys familiar with Office Space? Yeah? So when we think about this disconnection that we see, right, that he has anybody felt that before? Right? Like, I just don't care anymore, right? I have. It's really interesting because when we think about this notion of what we can do in an agile mindset, what we can do when we think about just simplifying it to those things, when we can think about value and driving toward that together, when we think about having empathy for our customer, and that should be anywhere, right? From the development team to that management to the product owner, we can really create something strong. Otherwise, what you just saw here was what I like to call a dead scrum soul, right? That's how we get that zombie effect. I'm here, but you know what? It's cool. I'm just trying to lay low. So that is my end message to you. That's it. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Questions?
Do you know I've been waiting for this moment until I could have any alcohol? I've had a bet that I couldn't not drink until this moment. I think Frederick printed out some evidence-based management guide. There, you have some copies. They have a little bit more detail. They have an appendix of suggested stuff. So keep on the lookout from scrum.org. We've just completed this measurement part, talking about how do we think about goals. And now what we're working on now is how do we turn that into improvement cycles and look at agile transformation. Okay, thanks a lot, guys.